You may have missed it, but earlier this week, Israel inaugurated a new president, Yitzhak Boogie Herzog. You may have missed the news because, in honesty, we've been much more attuned to the formation of a new Knesset with the Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Or you may have missed it because it wasn't covered that widely, and actuality, the President of Israel is more of a ceremonial position and has little influence over Israeli policy and politics. However, the selection of President Herzog to be the 11th President of Israel, I believe, is a bigger deal than the news reported. Herzog's father was the 6th President of Israel. Herzog has been in the Knesset as the head of the Labor Party, and Herzog is the first president who was born after the formation and the founding of the State of Israel. But even more significant, Herzog's selection is extremely important for Jews living outside of Israel. Prior to being elected, President Herzog was the chairman of the Jewish Agency and was a key partner in Israel and diaspora relations. Reporter Michael Jacobs writes, with the possible exception of his father, Herzog knows the U.S. Jewish community better than any former Israeli president. While his father was Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Herzog lived in New York and attended a modern Orthodox day school. He later studied at Cornell and NYU. Herzog knows that the diaspora-Israel relationship is a critical one and one that needs to be strengthened. Coincidentally, in this week's Torah portion, Matot, we read about the first voluntary Jewish diaspora. The Israelites are on the cusp of entering the Promised Land, when two tribes, the Reubenites and the Gadites, confront Moses. And they say they do not want to move across the Jordan, as the land where they are is suitable for their numerous amounts of cattle. Moses, as you can guess, is infuriated. He says to them, "Your brothers go to war, and you stay here?" However, the Reubenites and the Gadites hold the ground and are able to appease Moses. They promise Moses that though they will not live in the Promised Land, they will still fight with the children of Israel, and that they will not go back to their homes until all the Israelites possess the portions of the land. Moses accepts the promise, and he warns against breaking it. And there we have it, the first diaspora community supporting the land of Israel, a promise that was kept and we will continue to keep. Yet when we feel far away from Israel, when we don't always understand all the inner workings, and when we may not agree with every political or military move by the Israeli leadership, how do we make sure that we keep that promise? At the 2019 Union for Reform Judaism's biennial in Chicago, Isaac Herzog, then the executive chair of the Jewish Agency, shared a possible solution. How do we prevent an irreversible rift between the two major Jewish communities, between what I call Jerusalem and Babylon, 7 million Jews in Israel, 7 million Jews in North America? This is a major challenge, and it's up to us to educate our kids and to teach each other to know each other better. We can have disputes. We can have arguments. We can have different perceptions of life. But this must be done amidst one big family. This must be a dialogue amidst differences. This is essential to the core being of our people. History will judge our generation. Did we learn from lessons of the past? Did we overcome our differences? It requires everybody to be in this dialogue, and it requires respecting everyone around the table equally. And it requires that we again say that the love of Israel, Ahavat Yisrael, goes way beyond this leader or that leader, this political system or that political decision. At our temple, we have recently created an Israeli engagement committee, a group that is looking at new ways for us to connect, support, and learn about Israel. We will plan lectures and events. But at our last meeting, we discussed what it looks like to really be in dialogue with those in Israel, and how we can build relationships with specific communities in that land. We will be exploring opportunities to do this. It may be through a joint Bible class, a book group, conversation circles, or perhaps even an Israeli North American artist Beit Midrash. And of course, if you're interested in being a part of this group or the Israeli Engagement Committee, you can talk to me or Mark Epstein. As President Herzog said, the way we can strengthen the Israel diaspora relationship is by really understanding where each person is coming from. In our Torah portion this week, Moses reminded the Gadites and the Reubenites that they are part of something even larger. All the tribes were brought together in a moment of revelation on Mount Sinai. They became one people. Each tribe carries responsibility for the well-being of the 11 others. On this Shabbat, may we deepen our care for the fullness of communities of which we are a part. May we deepen our connections, learn from one another, so that those Jews living in Israel and those who might not have that those have a stronger partnership and a stronger future. May this be God's will. Shabbat Shalom.